Spurs are still in the cup and go to Villa Park in the fourth round. Not a great draw, but based on our form so far this season, we may well find that easier than the trip to Tamworth, where we very nearly became the biggest scalp in the history of the competition. I'll give my considered thoughts 24 hours on. Meanwhile, the transfer hunt continues and Spurs are still rumoured to be ahead of the pack for Kolo Muani. And ex-Coys man Kyle Walker has given in to the haters and requested a move abroad. Is he trying to get away from his club, their fans, or one of his many families? All this and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League Transfer News with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like and please do subscribe to my channel for daily Premier League transfer news across this January, always starting, of course, with my team, Tottenham Hotspur. I'm nearly at 15,000 subscribers. Help me get there, guys. But let's get started. And reports from reputable journalists in Italy say that Marcus Rashford's representatives are using possible interest from Tottenham Hotspur to put pressure on the likes of Milan and Juventus to increase their numbers to try and get Rashford through the door. Now, this is still an interesting one for me. It makes sense, as far as I'm concerned, that Tottenham would be interested in Marcus Rashford if they could get Manchester United to pay a fair chunk of his wages. I also don't think clubs like Juve and Milan are going to be able to afford all his wages either. And I don't think anyone is going to be able to pay the amount of money it would take to get him out of Manchester United on a permanent deal this January. I'll go on to mention more about Tottenham's reported interest in Kolo Muani from PSG, but I think one of the reasons why Tottenham are not pulling the trigger fully on Kolo Muani or Rashford or anyone at the moment is they're trying to see where the cards are going to fall. It's that kind of classic early transfer window bit where you know that all of the numbers that are being told to you by potential selling clubs or clubs who are looking to loan players out are far too high. But as the window gets closer to closing and clubs become more desperate to get people out the door, those numbers can come down. And of course, we know from down the years, all the interviews we've heard with ex-players and ex-managers at Tottenham Hotspur who all talk about how Daniel Levy absolutely adores the January transfer window. And this is why, because he loves the negotiation. He loves the kind of stalemate that then leads to the openings. And he loves the possibility that somewhere late in the day, there might be a deal to be done for less numbers than they're being offered at the moment. So that is what I think is happening with Marcus Rashford. Do I think he'll end up being a Spurs player at the end of this month? I'd be surprised. Let's put it that way. But you never know. You just never know. And like I've said in previous videos, I think Rashford, with a little bit of an arm around the shoulder or a little word in the ear from Ange Postecoglou, I really think he could be told, listen, you're a great player again. You can really do it. We're going to give you an opportunity to be one of the main players at Tottenham. Share the minutes early doors with Son Heung-min. Show us what you can do. But like I said, I'd be surprised. Anyway, another very strange rumour coming out of Spain. Not strange in terms of his talent and how well he's playing, but strange in that Tottenham have only just bought the player in the summer and we spent £40 million on him. But apparently Real Madrid are interested in Archie Gray. And as far as I'm concerned, they may want him. I'm sure a lot of clubs around Europe at the moment looking at him and thinking, wow, for an 18-year-old playing centre-back when he's a central midfield player in the Premier League at that age and doing so well, we need to get him through our door. Well, they may want him, but they cannot afford him. Like I said, Tottenham paid £40 million for Archie Gray. They pulled the trigger earlier than a lot of clubs would have been willing to do for such a young player. And as a result, we have got ourselves an absolute Rolls Royce. There is absolutely no way that he is going anywhere anytime soon. I've spoken about him on numerous times being potentially the next Steve Perryman, the next Gary Mabbutt at our club. Someone who starts incredibly young in the first team, stays in the first team and becomes a future Tottenham Hotspur captain. Did you see the interview he did after the game yesterday? He's only 18 years old, but he's already saying on national TV, no excuses for that performance today. A lot of us weren't good enough. A lot of the players, and he talked about we, but he also didn't shirk from saying a lot of the players were not at it. That's what he said specifically. He said they weren't at it today. So that shows some impressive leadership even at the age of 18. So look, Real Madrid, of course, you always like the look of our best players, Modric, Bale, etc. But I'm telling you now, Archie Gray is not going anywhere for a long, long time. And he's getting opportunities at Spurs at elite level that he wouldn't have got at any other club. I know Brentford were interested in him. Maybe he would have gone there. But we're talking about like proper elite level now, where even though we're in the same league as Brentford, and we're lower than Brentford, I think, in the league at the moment, the pressure at Tottenham is so much higher to perform. There's no kind of real huge development time. If you get your chance in the first team, you've got to perform. And Archie Gray is doing that. And it's very, very impressive. There have also been some reports this weekend that Tottenham are interested in West Brom striker and former Sunderland player Josh Maja. But to me, that sounds like agent talk. I'd be very surprised if Spurs went in for a young championship striker. And even Josh Maja, he's still young, but he's played a lot of games. He's been abroad. I remember him. He was one of the early talents that they talked about on that Sunderland documentary on Netflix a few years ago. He is talented, but I would be surprised if he came in this January. But like I said, with Rashford, never say never. Meanwhile, some reports earlier this weekend that Eintracht Frankfurt were plotting a move for Tottenham loanee Timo Werner. However, that they have been dampened, unfortunately, I would say. Frankfurt, of course, are assessing potential replacements for Manchester City or incoming Manchester City striker Omar Mamouche. And Werner was rumoured to be on that list. However, that has now been reported not to be true, which is a shame, because any of you who saw Timo Werner's performance yesterday at Tamworth will be saying there just shouldn't be many more opportunities for Timo. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Lovely boy, clearly a hard worker, but his confidence, in fact, I would say I've not seen a player whose confidence is as low as Timo Werner's, that he goes to a place like Tamworth and can't pass the ball 5 yards. I feel for him, but really Tottenham have made a bit of a boo-boo by not including a clause where we can let him go back in January, because that's what we should be doing. Fabrizio Romano has said the following about Tottenham's pursuit of Randall Kolo Muani. He said, Tottenham and Juventus are both pushing. Man United called to be informed as well on the deal last week. It's an open race. Spurs and Juventus are trying. Also, Ali Gold said, so I'm talking about reputable journalists here. He said that Tottenham have held talks over signing Kolo Muani from Paris Saint-Germain with a loan deal with an option to buy mooted. Plettigol, reputable journalist in Germany, said that Man United are now determined to do everything possible to sign Randall Kolo Muani as well, but that Tottenham are rumoured with Juventus to be at the kind of top of the tree in terms of possibilities. And even though it came out kind of late last week that Juventus were thought to be ahead in terms of Kolo Muani's thoughts, that has now been poo-pooed as well. He has not yet decided to prioritise a move for one club over another. So Tottenham and Juventus still thought to be heading the race. And Thiago Motta, the Juventus manager, is definitely interested in the player. Meanwhile, some more transfer rumours. Alfie Dorrington, who didn't get on yesterday for Spurs against Tamworth, which probably surprised a number of you, but that is because he is thought to be joining Scottish Premier League side Aberdeen on loan for the rest of the season. That is a good move as far as I'm concerned for Alfie Dorrington, as long as he can get some game time there. We've all seen how well Cameron Carter-Vickers has done since he moved to Celtic. He really didn't get many opportunities at Spurs. He was always thought of as a good, talented young player, came up through the academy, American international, but then he went to Celtic and he's blossomed there, and he's highly rated by the Celtic fans. So maybe Alfie Dorrington can go there, play some senior football, some proper senior football for the first time in his life, and get some game time at Aberdeen. Okay, guys, I'm now going to talk a little bit about my kind of more considered thoughts on the Tamworth game 12 hours later. I'll go into some kind of positives in a second, because I don't want to remain negative for too long. Obviously, I did an instant match reaction yesterday where I was frustrated. I will say now, I think the pitch did have a lot to do with it. Just as Archie Gray said, I'm not going to use it as the main excuse. I do think if Spurs could have just got an early goal, then I think Tamworth wouldn't have been able to play the way they did, and we would have won easily within the 90 minutes. Of course, the key point is we won and we're through, and it will be forgotten if we go on to, get to the final and win that trophy. And I will say that a lot of teams who do go on to win the big cups, the big domestic cups, they always have a game where it's very difficult, maybe 2 games within the cup run. And that was difficult, and it was very nearly, like I said at the top, the worst result in the history of the FA Cup for a top division side. But it wasn't, and that's key. And I have to say, I'll give some credit to Ange Postecoglou. He looked pretty calm throughout on the sidelines. I mean, can you imagine if Arteta had got himself in that situation, how mental he would be going on the sidelines and how he'd be blaming anyone but himself. And Ange Postecoglou was pretty calm. He's calm in his post-match press conference. He said, that's football. You've just got to find a way to get through it. There is some frustration, of course, that we had to bring on the likes of Solanke and Kulusevski to play on that 3-4G pitch and potentially risk injury. Dragoshin rolled his ankle during the game, so it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. Obviously, we've got Arsenal on Wednesday night, and we are severely lacking in centre-back options. So it is a bit of a frustration that we had to play such a strong team, but also on the flip of that, we've still got 10, 11 players out. Bentancur, of course, was added to the players out. He's doing concussion protocols after his head injury in the previous Premier League match. So a lot going against Spurs, and we had to find a way, and we did find a way. I'm going to talk about some positives now in terms of the players. Again, I just want to wax lyrical about Kinski, and I'm going to talk more about him in a second in terms of some of the quotes that have come out about his move to Spurs. But I have to say, I'll start with it. Vicario is in a lot of trouble, if you ask me. Let me know in the comments whether you agree. But I think Vicario is in a fair bit of trouble for his first team's place, because Kinski yesterday showed me something that I was a little worried that he wouldn't have. I said in a video at the end of last week, I thought we should play Forster against Tamworth, because I knew Tamworth had Tonks, I think it was, with the big long throw that he was going to throw into the 6-yard box at every opportunity from any position within the Spurs half, and he did that. But Kinski came and claimed everything, and he's so proactive with his starting position from set pieces and from corners and in open play as well. But he came and he claimed everything. And Vicario has to learn from him, because Kinski isn't as tall as Vicario. I think he's kind of a similar build, not by any means like slim, but not the kind of thickest, most rugged player. He's not as kind of thick in terms of physicality as, say, an Addison or an Ellison. An Alisson or an Edison, at Man City and Liverpool, who I think are two of the best goalkeepers in the world. But what Kinski does brilliantly is he is proactive and he comes for the ball aggressively. And I talked about this a lot earlier this season with Vicario when we were struggling from set pieces, and last season. As a keeper, if you come aggressively, if you then get the block from the opposition player, you will get the free kick. That's how it works. You have to be aggressive, and Kinski is, and therefore, even though he's shorter than Vicario, he seems more imposing. And he was brilliant. And of course, he was brilliant with the ball at his feet as well, incredibly calm, and he made a couple of important saves. He gets down well and early, so I'm very impressed with him. And like I said, after his debut, I think he gives us about another 20-25% in terms of our ball playing. Very, very excited. I've talked about how impressed I was with Archie Gray, just a Rolls Royce of a centre-back. Of course, he is a centre midfielder, but he could play centre-back if he wanted, or if maybe Ange will think, you know, you're so good at centre-back that you're going to have to stay there, mate. Jed Spence, who had to play centre-back again as well, looked so calm. Just, do you know what? I think one of the reasons why he got so much stick when out on loan, and also in his early days at Spurs from managers not really liking him, is because he's got this kind of laissez-faire attitude, very calm, laid back. And he's probably like that in training, and it probably frustrated the likes of Conte, and maybe it frustrated Big Ange in the early days. But the thing about that calmness and that laissez-faire attitude is, on the pitch, I think that suits Ange Ball so much. Because even when he came on at centre-back yesterday, he was willing to take players on. He was willing to bring the ball into midfield, take players on, and therefore kind of draw an opposition man to allow space for another player when he passed it on. So he impressed me, and I've got to give credit to Yves Bissouma, who frustrates me sometimes. I talk a lot about how I think he can do the hard things incredibly easily, and then sometimes he just loses concentration and struggles with the easier things like 5-yard passes or decision making. But yesterday I thought he was a cut above the not only the opposition but a lot of the other Spurs players on the pitch. He was willing to take risks on the turn, break through the midfield, kind of Dembele-esque performance, and I thought that was great. I'll move on now to the 4th round draw, Aston Villa away. Not easy, not the one I wanted to pull out the hat, but also if you look at it from an Aston Villa point of view, they won't want to have drawn Spurs home or away. They've got us home. One thing that is in their favour is that we've got the second leg of the League Cup just 3 days before that tie. So what we could probably hope for Spurs, if in a dream world, is maybe that tie to get moved to the Monday night to get a bit more rest time. But that probably won't happen, because I assume there are European games the following week. But if there aren't, let's hope that we get it taken to that Monday night. But that will be a big game. And listen, we've played our best football against the better teams this season, and Villa will have to come at us, and we will find gaps and opportunities. And of course, we should now, because that's in February, have our better players back. Romero, Van der Ven, as two examples. Richarlison should be back soon, giving us more squad depth. Bentancur should be back by then. So who knows? And if we're going to win all of the trophies, all of the cup competitions this year, as I am desperate for us to do, and I've talked about what Gerard Houllier did at Liverpool by winning all three trophies, not both, but the three, the League Cup, the FA Cup, and the UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League, then we're going to have to beat teams like Aston Villa. So bring it on. Let's go to Villa and let's do it. I mentioned, didn't I, about some quotes coming out about Kinski's move. Petr Cech revealed how he had scouted Antonin Kinski, for Chelsea before advising the goalkeeper on his move to Tottenham. He actually scouted Kinski when he was in the Czech under-16s international side a few years ago. He said he could see what a good ball player he was, what a good talent he was. Czech agrees that he's pretty much a good steal at 12.5 million. Napoli also wanted Kinski this January. They were going for the move. Here are the quotes. The priority was to agree a transfer now in the winter, with Kinski staying on loan at Prague until the end of the season. Napoli came in with the idea of losing their number one in the summer. Their number one is out, their goalkeeper is out of contract in the summer, and wanted to secure Kinski as a replacement, but then Tottenham stepped in and wanted to do it right away. It's hard to turn that down, that kind of interest. This is Kinski's agent talking. This is a Slavia Prague official talking. He said he and his side were surprised with Tottenham's approach and mentioned this when asked how Spurs managed to beat Napoli. We were a bit surprised at the beginning, but Spurs' interest was really big. Their owner, Daniel Levy, came to negotiate the transfer, so it quickly got to a level where the negotiations were between Levy and the Slavia Prague president, and it was quite dynamic. By the time it was obvious that Kinski was going to leave, and then other club officials did a great job and topped the whole transfer off by agreeing an incredible final transfer fee with Tottenham. Now, Slavia Prague may see that as an incredible fee. I see it as a steal for that keeper. I'm so excited by that young goalkeeper. I cannot talk about it enough. Victor Kohler, Kinski's agent, went on to say the whole team of people in that recruitment department, which includes, this is Tottenham's recruitment department, which includes Chief Scout Rob McKenzie and his 11 people, they agreed on Tony as one of the targets. They all raised their hands and voted from 0 to 10 for him, with all of them voting 10. They described and presented to us how they know Antonin, how his way of playing suits Tottenham's game, their game model they want to implement, and what Ange Postecoglou is promoting. So we were convinced that this is the right step, and that's why we chose Tottenham over Napoli. Also, some quotes came out over the weekend about our signing our centre-back wonder kid Luka Vuskovic, who's currently in Sweden at Westerlo. Is that Sweden? Westerlo? Belgium. What am I talking about? In Belgium at Westerlo on loan. Sorry, having a mental breakdown. He talked this week about how Manchester City were interested in him when Spurs signed him as well. He said, Manchester City were the first club to approach me. Shortly after, my dad told me that Spurs were interested. When I heard the details, I was convinced. So again, another example, as with Kinski, as with Dragusin when Spurs beat Bayern Munich to him, and as with Bergvall when Spurs beat Barcelona to him. The talk from Ange Postecoglou proving absolutely vital in getting these players through the door. Luka Vuskovic went on to say, "What exactly is the plan now? I'll just do what the club asks of me. Playing alongside defenders like Mickey van der Ven or Christian Romero is a dream. You naturally make progress in such an environment, and you have to because the Premier League is such an intense competition." Vuskovic will be coming to the club in the summer. Obviously he's incredibly young, 18 years old. He scored a lot of goals for Westerlo as a centre-back. Very impressive looking young player. But he comes in the summer, which is when the kind of Brexit rules will allow him to get a work permit as well. Ange Postecoglou came out late last week with some quotes on Radu Dragusin that I haven't been able to bring you, so I thought I'd bring you. He said, "I've said all along that some of our players at times are getting unfairly judged because of the situation we're in. It's not just that Radu is only 22 and still getting to grips with the Premier League. He would be okay if he was surrounded by players who are playing regularly, but he's got an 18-year-old who is not a centre-back next to him. 3 different goalkeepers, probably up to 4 since he's been in the team, different fullbacks. I just think Radu and Archie have been unbelievable for us considering the circumstances, and we will get growth from that. I really believe it. Radu was great the other night. He was really focused and disciplined in his organisation, and along with Kinski making his debut, and that is as solid as we've been as a back 4/back 5. The midfield did a really great job of working really hard. This is in the Liverpool game. There won't be many games like that where Liverpool create as little as they did the other night, and I think that was a really strong collective effort. We're happy with Radu and the way he's developing. He has had to battle. He had an illness last week and he was nowhere near 100%. He's probably one who does need a bit of a rest, but we have no options there. Every week he gets on with it. And then also just some final news on Bentancur's concussion. Spurs medical staff will make regular home checks on Bentancur over the coming days and have been doing over the weekend in light of his concussion. But Ange did come out and say that it's just concussion protocols now, which I think is about a 2-week absence. So should be back in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, guys, before I get on to some more wide-ranging Premier League news, please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Let's get it seen by as many transfer fans and Spurs fans as possible. And also, like I said, please do subscribe to my channel. I'm getting closer to 15,000 subscribers. Really want to get there and build this community together. Okay, let's get started over at Old Trafford. Of course, Napoli manager Antonio Conte, he wants Alejandro Garnacho to replace Kvaratskhelia, easy for me to say, who is set on a move to Paris Saint-Germain. United were interested in signing the Georgian international themselves, and are proposing the idea of exchanging Marcus Rashford for the winger with Napoli. But it looks very much like PSG have won the race for him. Liverpool were also potentially interested in a move. Meanwhile, United, Arsenal and Liverpool are all now looking at a player who was on Spurs' list for a long time. The Wolves 23-year-old defensive midfielder, Brazilian João Gomes. Monaco and Barcelona added to the list of clubs interested in Rashford, as well as the previously mentioned Italian clubs I talked about at the top of the video, and Dortmund. Meanwhile, over at Manchester City, I'm sure you've seen, Kyle Walker has requested a transfer and wants to move abroad. AC Milan have opened talks for him. Inter also interested. Nothing has been agreed yet, but contacts have been made to understand the deal conditions. Saudi clubs keeping a watching brief as well, but apparently Kyle Walker wants to stay in Europe. The deal for Kuzanov to Manchester City from Lens, the centre-back, who was another player on Tottenham's list, is very nearly done. 40 million euros, that's about 33 million pounds. Also, City have agreed personal terms with Vitor Reis, the Palmeiras centre-back, about 40 million euros. So City going big to try and improve their season. Borussia Dortmund have made an approach for Manchester City's 19-year-old English defender Max Allain. Over to Liverpool, Luis Diaz has rejected a contract offer from Liverpool because he's keen on that move to Barcelona that I've talked about previously. Liverpool would be loath to lose Luis Diaz, I'm sure, considering the possibility that they still have of losing Trent, Salah and Van Dijk, whose contracts all run out this summer. Meanwhile, their English midfielder, Harvey Elliott, who's still only 21, is attracting interest from Brighton and Borussia Dortmund because of his lack of game time. 4 Bournemouth stars are attracting interest from top Premier League clubs. Zabarnyi, Kirkes, Semenyo and Hausen are all being monitored by Chelsea, Newcastle and Liverpool. That shows how well Iraola is doing at Bournemouth this season. Those young players, at least one of whom, Hausen, was on Spurs' list in the summer, all doing brilliantly at Bournemouth. Borussia Dortmund still, again, looking at young English players. They're now trying to get Chukwuemeka from Chelsea and are exploring a loan deal. Over to Newcastle, they're interested in Southampton England keeper Aaron Ramsdale, potentially looking to get him in to give competition to Nick Pope. And let's go to Aston Villa. They've increased their bid for Borussia Dortmund forward Donyell Marlin to 25 million euros, but the German side want 30 million euros. And also, big talk this weekend that Paris Saint-Germain are negotiating with Aston Villa for John Duran. Why would they let go of John Duran when he's scoring so many goals? Doesn't make sense. He must be kicking up a fuss behind the scenes because he doesn't start every game ahead of Ollie Watkins. Some reports for Everton, who obviously have just appointed David Moyes as their manager again, some reports that Atalanta want to complete the free transfer signing of Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the summer because his contract runs out then, or to give a fee to Everton to get him in this January. Calvert-Lewin has also been linked with a free transfer move to Newcastle. I actually like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's getting a lot of stick this season because as an Everton fan friend told me, he can't finish his dinner. But I think Calvert-Lewin is a good player who, under the right managership, if he could stay fit, and that is the key, can and has scored many Premier League goals. I really like him. As I mentioned, West Ham, the latest club to consider a loan for Marcus Rashford. West Ham also interested in Keenan Gisbury-Hall and Chukwuemeka from Chelsea. Wolves and Ipswich have opened preliminary talks to sign ex-Leicester and Man City striker Kalichi Iheanacho from Sevilla. A Spanish club have been given the green light, or have given the green light to the former Leicester player to be loaned out. At Bournemouth again, Napoli have signed Philip Billing from them. Antonio Conte once again coming back to England to buy players, but no ex-Spurs players I've noticed, or no Spurs players. Valencia have agreed a deal for Max Aarons to join from Bournemouth as well. Bournemouth doing a lot of business. And over to South London club Arsenal. They cannot afford the British record transfer fee it would take to sign Alexander Isak from Newcastle, whilst, as I mentioned late last week, they have allowed Alexander Zinchenko to leave the Gunners if they get the right bid this month. And also Arsenal are targeting some top young talents in Europe, including apparently Sver Halsith Nijpen from Rosenborg. That's according to David Ornstein, who is very reputable ITK-wise and is probably worth listening to. Okay, guys, that is the end of Monday's edition of the Daily Premier League Transfer News with me, Barnaby. So thanks so much for watching. Please do give this video a like. Please do press subscribe. Help me up to 15,000 subscribers and try and enjoy the most difficult day of the week if you can. Obviously, as a Spurs fan, looking forward to that North London derby on Wednesday night. Have a good one, guys. Cheers.